You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang, returning from the illness list, and with me, as always, is Skyler Timmons. Skyler.
It's true. Howdy, howdy. Welcome back.
Huge thanks to Skyler for holding it down last week with a nice long solo episode when we had some actual somewhat kind of breaking news to discuss. Not super breaking, but now that we've got that a little bit in the rear view and that I am mostly recovered, we can talk about things a little bit more. But first, Skyler, a few games into the Colorado Avalanche season, you've been doing a little Avs writing over on Fans First Sports Network, and we've now watched the first couple of games. What are your thoughts? My biggest concern is that power play. 2 for 12? So far on the power play to start the season, not looking super great.
Yeah, they got to get that dynamic down better on those power plays. They're getting some good penalty kills, so they're doing good on the opposite end of it. And like last night on Saturday playing the Dallas Stars, they were aggressive and playing that high octane hockey that we've come to expect from the Avalanche. But unfortunately, those awful Dallas Stars ended up winning it in the shootout.
Yeah, but that was the big thing with the Avs outplayed the Stars for 55 of 60 minutes in that game, and the Stars walk away with the win because the Avs had some bad luck and couldn't capitalize on opportunities.
Yeah, no, the irony of the day I wrote an article talking about Scott Wedgwood and gets scored on twice in the shootout and everything. Scott Wedgwood is a nice job filling in, stepping into that primary role while Mackenzie Blackwood is recovering from injury, but it's early in the season, so I wouldn't worry too much about the Avalanche.
Oh yeah, and the big thing for Wedge is, he's the backup goalie. It's already abnormal that he's started 3 games in a row with only a day off or 2 days off between each game.
But he's done good.
That's not normally his bread and butter, and to really only have one quote unquote bad game, and a lot of that was bad luck and some bad decision making on the Avs part. So I'm not terribly worried. I think Wedge has done a good job, and the things to appreciate is overall the defense has been fine except against the Stars, and the offense, especially even strength, has looked really good, especially Mr. Marty Nachos, who's already got 3 goals this season and could have potentially had 2 more last night if not for some outstanding saves by Jake Ottinger.
Yeah, and after watching 162 games of the Rockies of bad baseball, it's just been so refreshing to watch the Avalanche because it's electric, it's exciting. You have 2 of the best players in the league in Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar, and it's just, I love watching MacKinnon skate. It's just it's amazing to watch. Even
watching bad Avs hockey, their second game was not against Utah. They were not playing their best hockey. Is still more fun and interesting to watch than any Colorado Rockies game was in 2025.
Yeah, so it's fun to have them back. And hey, the Broncos won in England today too. So
it was hideous. It was without a doubt one of the worst football games I've watched in maybe ever, but quite some time.
For anything we've learned about the Broncos is they play to the level of their opponent a lot of the time.
But the fact that they barely beat a team that finished the day with net -10 passing yards, a team that they sacked 9 times and they barely won. Ooh, it was rough. That was a rough game.
Yeah, but win's a win. We'll take
That's true.
And Nuggets aren't too far off, so good times ahead.
We've got things to continue to distract us.
and we've covered the I don't think FFSN Fans First has an Avalanche podcast, so we just filled that void for people looking for that.
But unfortunately, for both us and for our wonderful listeners, this is not a Colorado Avalanche or Denver Broncos podcast. This is a Colorado Rockies podcast. And Skyler, there is a little bit more Rockies stuff to talk about here today. Last week, Skyler flying solo discussed the quote-unquote resignation of one Mr. Big Dollar Bill Schmidt. And earlier this week, hot off the heels of that, we got news that assistant general manager and a bunch of other roles with the team, Zach Rosenthal, has also resigned.
Mm-hmm. And before we dive into that, Evan, I wanted to get your thoughts on Bill Schmidt, his resignation, and your reaction to that, since you weren't here to talk about that last week.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't had a chance to listen to last week's episode yet, so you may have... I just went through all my thoughts on it. Sick. I was so sick. I was so miserable that weekend.
Yeah. But to give you the quick, the TLDR on it, where, as we've talked about, it was a move that needed to happen. Bill Schmidt just did not implement the things he needed to, and it was a lot of stagnation for the club. And so this is a step in the right direction, was pretty much my take on it.
Yeah. For me, my honest thought on the matter is that Bill Schmidt, a lot of people were angry about Bill Schmidt resigning and not being fired. And I think Bill Schmidt was, quote unquote, allowed to resign.
Yeah.
The Rockies have done this many, many times before for the guys that they like, the guys that they have been loyal to, as sort of like a face saving, you get to, quote unquote, leave on your own terms kind of thing. My guess on the matter is they went, Bill, we need you to resign. We need you to step down.
Yeah.
And that is what he did. And it's the right move, I think, for both him and the organization. I was definitely surprised that he did fully resign. I was fully expecting them to just reassign him elsewhere in the organization, eventually put him in some other, less forward-facing role, and he would stay with the Rockies, because this is a guy who's been with the team since, 1999? One of many people in the front office who have been there for 20 plus years, and instead he fully resigns and steps away from the organization. But it's the right move, and the Rockies have, at least so far, indicated that they plan to search outside the organization for their next head of baseball operations.
Yeah, and I think that's part of like what was surprising. You see Zach Rosenthal resign, because in his position as assistant GM or vice president, he's in prime position to get an internal interview. And it's like the same old song and dance where, okay, they're going to interview a bunch of people, but then Zach Rosenthal just gets the job type of thing. But the fact that he's kind of resigning maybe is a signal to, okay, yeah, my opportunities here aren't going to extend beyond me being, an assistant GM here at the Rockies. And, he's been involved with the organization for a long time. Nearly 20 years. Well, you'll find when you talk about a lot of people in that front office, they've been here for a long time. Since the Bush administration type of thing. They've been here
earlier.
Or earlier. Or when old Bill Clinton was in office. But, there's a lot of, stagnation, like I said. And so you're seeing a little bit refreshing where Walker Monfort's coming out and saying, we're looking for new sets of eyes. We're trying to fix this situation. You don't fix it by keeping Bill around. You don't keep it, by guys like Zach Rosenthal maybe moving up into the chair. Because that's no different than what we've already had between the two previous GMs.
Yeah. And what this really, really means for me is that, especially when it comes to Zach Rosenthal, is that the writing was on the wall that, normally when you think the Rockies, you would think, all right, Rosenthal is probably the heir apparent. He's younger than Schmidt. He's the assistant GM. He's, maybe one of the key candidates potentially to move into that role. And for him to resign, I think what that really says is that either they told him or he recognized that he's not moving into that role, that it's not his to have, that they are going to look from outside the organization. And I think that is really, really important for the Rockies to actually do.
Yeah, because could Zach Rosenthal move up into that role and do a good job? Yeah, he could. Like, you never know. Like, once you get into that big chair, maybe you get to actually do things your way and you have a lot more pull in that way. But there's also the factor where it would probably just be more of the same, where it's a guy who's been here forever and we're just trying the same old ideas again type of thing. So it's good to have the clean break where he can then maybe go get opportunities elsewhere. And the Rockies can truly commit to let's bring in some new ideas, guys from different organizations that have found success that then can come here and fully do what they need to do.
And I think what this really says, and we've now seen this a few times this season with Schmidt, Rosenthal, and earlier in the year, Greg Fiesel, when he announced his retirement at the end of the season for Walker Monfort to step into that executive vice president role is we are seeing finally a changing of the old guard. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in my Monday article over on Purple Row, but there's such a big difference between stability, which I think the Rockies have touted as, oh, we're so stable. All of our people in our organization have been here forever. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And stagnation, which is, oh, all of the people in this organization have been here forever. That's not great. And so now we've seen these three prominent front office roles, and I do think there will be more coming. Step away from the organization. And I think there's going to be a lot more change when the Rockies finally do choose who is going to be their new general manager or head of baseball operations. And in my opinion, one of the reasons why we've heard very little on that front so far is the Rockies are, in my opinion, probably eyeing people from some of the teams that are still in the playoffs. I think they're eyeing someone from the Brewers or the Mariners organizations.
Yeah, because that's what I think Thomas Harding had written about that for MLB.com of kind of what they're looking for. And it was those GMs from maybe small to mid-market teams like the Rockies who have found success in development and just working on constrained maybe budgets, a little bit less finances to work with. That's who they're looking for. And oddly enough, there's a good number of teams that are still in the playoffs doing that. And also because they need permission from other teams. So it's the fact that they're not rushing into a decision right now. Like they're actually doing the due diligence. Like we're hearing very little of what they're doing, but you can expect, okay, maybe they're doing their due diligence, trying to expand the net and not trying to rush into a decision. I think it was talking about because there's a lot of important dates coming up in a couple weeks. Once the World Series is over, free agency and all this stuff, they're not rushing into it. Like, yeah, they understand. In the meantime, they'll just have a group of baseball decision makers kind of handle that stuff in the meantime until they can get somebody in place. And so here is patience is okay when you're trying to find the right man for the job, which is what the Rockies have struggled to do.
Yeah, and I think I do understand some frustration, especially because when the other bad teams have already made some pretty big moves. You had the White Sox get rid of basically their entire coaching staff except for their manager. You've seen other teams, even teams that were pretty decent last year, do the same. You've seen the Washington Nationals have already named their new GM and president of baseball operations. At least in theory, it's not official yet, but poaching someone from the Boston Red Sox who had a very good season. But for the Rockies, I think if they are eyeing someone from the Mariners or Brewers, that's a really good fit because you've got two smaller to mid-market teams, like you said, that are more focused on player development and working within the kind of budget constraints that the Rockies have. The Brewers consistently have a pretty lower payroll. The Mariners have a low to mid-level payroll, but they develop well. And two things that both organizations do really well is develop pitching.
Yeah. And that's probably the biggest thing for whoever comes in. It's going to be this focus on how to figure out the pitching problem with Colorado, because that's first and foremost the biggest issue. And obviously offense is also a huge issue. Pitching first and foremost is top of the list. And whoever it is, you got to figure out who's got the right idea, right plan that they're confident in implementing, and it's going to be tough. But I was looking at, Thomas Harding had an article just recently over on October 10th, kind of listing out some questions about this stuff and talking about the leader here, Evan. So it's like the belief is someone will be in place by the end of the World Series, or at least by the general managers meeting in Las Vegas, November 10th through the 13th. So roughly within the month, within 30 days, we'll have the GM or whoever it will be. The resignation of assistant GM Zach Rosenthal makes it even more likely there will be more than one higher high in. That's a weird sentence. More than one higher high in the baseball organization. But the new head will be given the task of reshaping the organization throughout. The new front office, with the uniqueness of Denver's atmosphere, the new front office and organization is likely to be a mix of newcomers and organization veterans, many of whom are hungry for change. Leadership will include experience with trades and major league free agency. The last two GMs, Jeff Bridich and Bill Schmidt, were promoted from jobs that didn't have those as primary responsibilities. That's a big one. I'm reading that, Evan. Huge of a guy that can come in, that can work with the league within the confidence of what is a GM's role, because Breitich and Schmidt, what was their main focus? It was scouting and developing type of stuff. That's what they worked in. So trading and working in free agency wasn't really their forte.
Yeah, and I think a big important role of whoever's going to be coming in as the new GM and head of baseball ops is, one, you've got to repair the image that the Rockies have throughout the rest of the league when it comes to free agents and making this a place that players actually want to come to.
Yeah.
And also making it so that other organizations want to work with you when it comes to trades, when it comes to other stuff. Because what have we heard so constantly over the last few years? It's, man, the Rockies are really weird. They're difficult to deal with. It's hard to understand what it is they want or what they're looking for. And, you know, we've seen the Rockies really settle into a groove of they only have a few trade partners where it's, you know, these are very clearly the teams that they like dealing with. You know, the Atlanta Braves, for example, they've made a ton of deals with the Braves over the last few years. And that's going to be important because scouting and player development is also important, but you can hire people to be in that role. And I think we're going to see a lot more moves once we've got that name locked in, and we're going to potentially see other people step down or move on or get hired in. And, you know, I think there are going to be some people whose jobs are safe. I think a lot of the international guys are probably going to be fine.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where there's just so much uncertainty, and there's going to continue to be uncertainty until you've got your hire set in stone. And it's the same for the coaching staff too, of we've heard nothing on if they're going to remove the interim label or not for Warren Schaefer, pardon me, or any of the other coaching staff or any of the other front office staff, because we're just not going to know, because that's going to be entirely up to the new GM.
Yeah, which is good. And I know we're running short on this segment, but of the people that have been rumored, Evan, of candidates for the front office job, who do you want, or who do you think is most likely to get it? There's been guys like Thad Levine mentioned, Billy Epler, Andy McKay, Billy Epler, who's with the Brewers, Andy McKay's with the Mariners. Then there's also, there was like Dayton Moore with the Royals. There was like Harding also mentions like Scott Sharp with the Royals, Matt Klein with the Brewers, Emil Sadoway, I'm sorry, I'm butchering that, Sade, and then Mike Fitzgerald with the Diamondbacks, and then Matt Foreman and James Harris with the Guardians. But just, if you had your pick, who do you think is gonna be it?
It's a tough call, honestly. I can tell you the one who I definitely don't want is probably Dayton Moore.
But he went to the World Series.
Not super. Outside of that, not super thrilled with his overall line of work that he's put together so far. I think probably the best fits are going to be Epler, McKay, or Levine. And rumor has it that the Rockies are high on Levine, as they've been for a while. You know, he originally started with the organization. But I think those three are probably going to be the top candidates. I do think the guy from the Diamondbacks is an interesting sleeper candidate, especially because the Diamondbacks have done a lot of the things the Rockies have not done well recently. But honestly, I don't know. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's so hard to... This team is still going to be very secretive, very quiet on what they're actually going to do. Because remember, you know, they did not have Bill Schmidt resign right away or fire him right away. It took a couple days in, and people, myself included, would be like, what's going on? Why has this not been announced yet? And I think the Rockies are going to continue to wear everything very, very quietly, very, very close to their chest.
Watch Wednesdays, everybody. It's the last two announcements have come on a Wednesday. It's your day of the week.
It's because they specifically want to sabotage your column.
Yeah, they're trying to bury my truth that I'm putting out there. Yeah, it's so hard to... The Rockies, at this point, are such a blank slate of what it can... It's a piece of clay that is just a blob right now. I don't know what it can be, who's going to be the right artist to kind of form it into what they want it to be. It's fun to think about, but like, it's hard to cover because we're like, we have no idea. There's so much could happen. They could go with the safe, easy, normal pick they always do, or they could go something that's just completely out of left field that none of us expected, and it works out wonderfully for them.
Yeah. I mean, and the bright side is, here I think the safe, easy pick would have been in their eyes, originally, under the eyes of Dick Monfort, would have been Zach Rosenthal or Sterling Monfort or somebody like that. Somebody who's already with the organization and already has some experience on the baseball ops side of things with the Rockies, because we know how Dick Monfort has operated, of going, unless you've worked in mile-high baseball, you just don't get it. And I think so far what we are seeing is the influence of Walker Monfort.
Yeah, and I know we talked about it. Like, we didn't necessarily like praise it, but we also didn't like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. It was like, whatever. But that was the caveat, is that Walker would come in and kind of have that, be able to have his dad's attention, be able to kind of talk into his ear, like, yeah, Dad, we got to try something else. We got to do something new. We have to do this. And it's kind of seeing, I could see where, they're not going to hire a president of baseball ops because Walker's kind of absorbing that responsibility a little bit, or he's going to be a little bit more engaged in it than Greg Fiesel was. But you never know. But the fact that he's getting involved and maybe having a little bit more say than his dad, and kind of having his opinion matter, where he's pushing for it. Yeah, we need to try new things. We have to do this other stuff. No, someone who's learned from the sins of the father. I'm going to do something different, and hopefully it works out.
Yeah. But we'll just keep watching and waiting to see what more news happens. The championship series for the playoffs starts at time of the day that we are recording this here, which is Sunday.
What a fun team. We'll get into it later, but what a fun matchup of teams aside from one.
Yeah. 3 of 4 ain't bad.
3 of 4 teams are very exciting to have there.
But we'll keep talking Rockies baseball, so don't go anywhere. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude. I'm Evan, that's Skyler. And Skyler, sort of just carrying right on from our previous discussion, we talked about the general manager search and the Rockies baseball operations. And what sort of leads naturally into that is what's going to happen with this coaching staff. A lot of interim names, a lot of temporary names to end the 2025 season. And we don't really know what the fate's going to be. And one of the first things that we're going to have to find out when we have a new GM is who is going to be the leader in the clubhouse for this team.
It will, I think, honestly, that will be the first test of how much autonomy, the new head of the front office, the head of baseball ops, whatever he is, because they still haven't been clear whether they're going for a PBO or just a general manager. But whoever it is, it feels like that'll be the first test of really what are they bringing to the table, what is their vision for it, and what that process will be like with getting a new manager, whoever it is. And that'll be that first test, I think, of how much autonomy, because is it going to be, well, this is who Dick Monfort wants you to get, so go get him, or will he have full reign to just like, hey, I like you, Warren Schaefer, you did great, but I want my guy, I want somebody else.
Yeah, and I can see it. It's really tricky because I can see it from both avenues, where you might want to keep Warren Schaefer and you might want to move on from Warren Schaefer. And I think both of those honestly don't have that much to do with the overall results of the 2025 season under Schaefer, because there's been a lot of questions from the beginning of how much autonomy did Schaefer have when it came to the lineup and playing time and stuff like that as the interim manager. But also it's, do you want to give him a quote-unquote fair shake at the ground level of a full-on rebuild, or do you want to, cut all ties and completely start from scratch?
Yeah, and that could be one of those things too, where you let Schaefer, he'll have his opportunity, I'm sure, for that interview process. Schaefer, come on in, interview for it, and really give him his chance to fight for that job. I'd say he definitely has earned a real shot at it. With the hand he was dealt, he did generally a good job throughout the season with the situation and just how he was handling the team itself. Like, did more than enough, and he understood, and he's bought into what this team needs to do, and he was never shy from it. Like, yeah, we're not doing what we were supposed to. So he's all bought in, like, of where the team is and what they need to do, and that more than enough. And like, the players respect him and everything, and they liked having him there. So he gets it in that sense, where hopefully he does get that. I could see him like getting that, we're going to give you the full year 2026 before the CBA goes, and then we're going to wait and see after that type of thing, maybe. But yeah, like you're saying, give him a fair shake. You could give him the 2026 season, see how that goes, how the team operates and everything, and then go from there. Like, well, we liked Schaaf, but it's just not what we're looking for with what we want to rebuild this team into in these coming years.
Yeah. Give him a true audition year. And really what I wonder is, because I bet even if they choose not to name Schaaf the full-time manager, is would he be willing to step back down into a lower role still on the coaching staff? Because I do think the organization likes Warren Schaefer a lot. Yeah. And I think he brings a lot to the table. But would he be willing to step back down into, a bench coach role or go back to being one of the base coaches or something like that under a different manager? And the question is, honestly, we have no idea. It's not something we've really had a chance to talk to Schaaf about or anything like that. And it's not something we're really going to know until we actually get there. But for me, for Warren Schaefer, it's a question of choosing between the fact that on one hand, he does espouse a lot of the ideology behind a rebuild.
Yeah.
Of playing the young guys, of openness and accountability, and, trying to get all of his young players on the same page from a development perspective, especially with his history of being a minor league manager. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, choosing to keep Schaefer as the manager would really feel like the Rockies making the safe pick of the guy who's been with the organization for a long, long time. Schaefer's another organization lifer. He's been here for almost 20 years at this point in some capacity. And if you're looking for outside blood, he is not necessarily the guy. And so what that really makes you question then is, what then are you looking for in a manager moving forward if it's not Warren Schaefer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing, is what you have to get the right manager for the time that you need. And so it's figuring out what type of manager do you want. Do you want maybe the inexperienced, but the in-houser, like a guy who understands his role in a Warren Schaefer? Or do you go for a more established voice, like a Bud Black was, an established voice with some history of success, and put him at the top? And it's, I think, having that clear understanding of what is this manager's role going to be. Like you said, it's probably for the rebuild to start, and beyond that. That's kind of why the Rockies kept keeping Bud Black around. It's like, he wants to see this through. He wants to see it through the rebuild and back to contention, and he was not the right guy for that. He was, we've said time and time again, he was good for those competitive years, but then it became quickly apparent he was not the man for the job anymore.
Yeah, and we've discussed multiple times how, and it came back up when there were rumors floating around that the Rockies might bring back Bud Black in some advisory role, of this team needs to avoid making the safe decisions just because they feel safe, because they're guys that they know, because they're guys that they're acquainted with. And, I think the problem is that makes it such an unknown is that Warren Schaefer and a lot of other guys in or around the organization fall into that category, categorically, of being potentially the safe pick. Because, who are some of the other guys in the organization that you might want to see on a big league coaching staff if it's not Schaefer? Well, you've got the, Chris D'Onofrio and Bobby Meacham and other guys who have been here for a while, and they know what they're doing, and they're potentially good fits for the job, but they're also the safe roles for the job. And I think these are all guys, Meacham especially, are guys deserving of at least an interview for the position.
Yeah. That you got to cast a wide net. And I think it's good when you're looking for that manager is someone who's going to work in unison with the front office, that there's that, everybody's on the same page. Because at times, in the past, it would be like, well, Jeff Bridich or, Bill Schmidt are doing one thing, but then Bud Black's doing something else on the roster. And so there was just kind of that disconnect that we always kept talking about these last few years, where, hey, we're bringing up this young guy, this top prospect, we're bringing him up to the roster. How awesome is that? Why is Jake Cave starting again? It became that kind of thing again and again. So you need, bottom line, whether it's an experienced guy or a young, inexperienced guy, for manager, there has to be that unison. One of Bill Schmidt's favorite quotes, everybody's pulling on the same rope, the same direction. You need that. And the Rockies didn't have it. I think Warren Schaefer, showed what the Rockies needed out of a manager, where he was on the same page of, we got to play these young guys. Now I'm going to get these veterans in there as needed, but I'm relying on the young guys because that's what these guys need.
Yeah. I definitely wonder how much autonomy Schaefer had when it came to building the lineup, especially because we did see, honestly, far too much of guys like Kyle Farmer and Orlando Arcia, even in the waning days of the season. And, you had other things that we didn't necessarily agree with, like the way that they handled Drew Romo.
Yeah.
But that's, I don't think, something we're ever really going to know.
I feel like he had full reign to do whatever as a manager, but he became a lot more the concern of load management and, getting guys days off more and more. And I think that was the directive from the front office of, we need to keep our guys fresh. So, because that was the messaging at the start of the season that Bud Blackman was not doing.
Let's try and get out of the season with minimal injuries.
Yeah, and so we're going to put, because Orlando Arcia and Kyle Farmer became your leaders in the lineup. Those were the old men, the father figures for these players to look to, and so that's probably why we see more of them as the young guys kind of get acclimated and whatnot. But yeah, he got a lot more into the rotation and managing. At a point, it became, I think for Warren Schaefer, it was just load management with guys of, okay, it's just plugging guys into the lineup instead of, no, I'm just going to fill the lineup with guys instead of plugging guys where they need to be in the lineup.
Yeah. Another big thing for me is, in addition to the manager, it's how they fill out the other coaching roles.
Yeah.
Because I think every coaching role in this organization should not be left unturned, especially when it comes to pitching coaches. And right now, for example, in the Arizona Fall League, you've got minor league pitching coordinator Flint Wallace serving as the pitching coach for the Salt River Rafters, and that's generally a role that they put people in where they are looking at and evaluating if they are potentially going to be a big league level coach. A good example is Nick Wilson was the hitting coach for the Rafters last year. Previously, he was the hitting coordinator, and then he was one of the two interim hitting coaches during this season after all the heads rolled, so to speak. And the real question is, what is this coaching staff going to look like? Because honestly, I think pretty much everybody should be considered for replacement on this coaching staff.
Yeah.
Especially Darryl Scott, who's been here for quite some time. And, the pitching was atrocious this year. There's no other way to put it. The pitching was terrible this year. But then you have other guys like Dustin Garneau, who I think did a really good job as the bullpen coach. And you've got other guys, your lifers, like, I love Ron Gideon. Does he really need to still be here? Andy Gonzalez, who was named the interim third base coach when Warren Schaefer was put in the interim coaching role, interim manager role. Who's going to be the bench coach? Who's going to fill all of these positions? And if they're going to be people from inside the organization or from outside the organization.
Yeah, and that'll go back to who the manager is, because a lot of the time the manager is the one who gets to kind of handpick who he wants or has more influence on. Well, I want this guy, and so bring him in. And yeah, it goes back to that people working in unison. Now, Darryl Scott, I'm sorry, why did he keep getting promoted up and holding on to those roles? No, he had his career in the minors and working with the organization in the minors, but then the bullpen was awful during that time, and then he gets moved up into the primary pitching coach, and the starting pitching was awful. So he hasn't really done much to inspire much. So you hope that the new manager can then surround himself with good people and that the organization signs off on, let's bring in good people. But when it comes to that hitting coach, Evan, you mentioned that, it'll be interesting to see what they decide, if they want to keep going with it's kind of like two co-head coaches, hitting coaches, because you'll hear from other big leaguers or coaching guys around the league, the two head hitting coaches, it's not good. It doesn't work very well because it's too many cooks in the kitchen type thing. And so it'll just be interesting to see what they can do. And honestly, it goes back to who can you bring in. I think more importantly, especially when you talk about those other coaches, Evan, is the research and the development, the resources for those coaches to do their job more effectively. Because what information is Darryl Scott working with? What was he familiar with? We know the limitations of the R&D department for the Rockies and analytics and all that stuff. No, how much info did Nick Wilson and Jordan Pacheco have to work with their hitters? What were they working with? Obviously, it wasn't very helpful.
Yeah. And I think there is going to be a lot of names still in the organization to keep an eye on for all of these positions. I mentioned Bobby Meacham, the manager of AA Hartford. Other guys who I think are potentially going to get an opportunity for higher level coaching roles or to experiment with are going to be guys like Tony Wolters, who's the bench coach down in the Arizona Complex League, back-to-back playoff runs for the Arizona Complex League. Rockies in the last 2 seasons with Wolters on the coaching staff. Guys like Scott Oberg, who's been promoted into, more of a pitching coordinator and director sort of role with the departure of Steve Foster. And guys like, Flint Wallace and Nick Wilson, Jordan Pacheco. There's a lot of different names within the organization to keep an eye on and see if the Rockies turn to them or if they pull in people from outside the organization.
Yeah. It's like just the domino effect of, okay, who's going to be in charge of the front office? What managers does he get? What people does the manager want to surround himself with?
Yeah. And you know what? I think we have the answers to all of these by the time we get to the winter meetings.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, it's just an interesting domino effect of how it will trickle down for this team. It starts at the top, and really it starts with Dick Monfort kind of deciding, okay, let's bring in change. You still hear quotes from him where he's kind of resistant to some things that he's had over these last few months, but we're hearing less of him and more of Walker of like, okay, we're doing this. We want to look for this type of thing. We need new sets of eyes, a fresh perspective, accepting that. So it's starting there. And then, okay, who do they pick to work under them? Okay, who's this guy picked to work under him? So it's really pivotal. You're just starting to see the slow trickle coming down. And it'll either turn into a mighty river or it's just going to be a little puddle at the bottom.
I hope it's not a puddle.
What about a fjord?
Not really the same thing. But, ask Slarty Bartfast about that. References. But yeah, that's the front office and the managerial searches. Like I said, we're going to hear more and more about this over the next couple of weeks, especially as the playoffs start nearing their end. We're, a week and a half away from the World Series. And I think the more time goes on, the more we're going to find out. So we'll just keep an eye on it and we'll keep everybody posted as things go on.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, we are going to take one more quick break. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude with Evan and Skyler. One final segment here with us today. And Skyler.
Yes?
You'd never know it because the Rockies aren't in it. But it's playoffs, baby.
What?
Postseason baseball in full swing. We have seen the Final Four fall into place. The American League Championship Series is the Seattle Mariners, our friends in the Pacific Northwest, versus the Toronto Blue Jays. And in the National League, it is the Milwaukee Brewers versus the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Boo.
Hey, 3 out of 4 ain't bad for...
Phillies blew it.
Phillies blew it.
Choke.
They really did. It was rough. I feel really bad for poor Orion Kerkering, who made that panic move that caused the Phillies to be eliminated in the first ever walk-off error in an elimination game in MLB postseason history.
It's all part of the Dodgers' plan. That's why they didn't want the best record in the league. It was a long con.
Yeah.
They just wanted to play in that wild card round so they didn't have the day off.
But the big thing, I think, for the Phillies is the offense really didn't show up for most of that series.
That's how it is for a lot of these teams where the big players just are never a factor. When the lights are shining brightest, some of the game's best are not doing their thing for these teams.
Yeah. At one point, the Phillies had gone 15 innings without scoring a run against the Dodgers. That's just, it's not going to play.
Chump change when you're a Rockies fan.
Oh, what was the, what was our consecutive streak?
Or 33 innings.
Ugh. But when it comes to the playoffs, I think overall, it's been pretty fun so far. 3 out of the 4 wild card series were not, went to 3 games. And we didn't have any sweeps in the divisional series, which is great. I think we had a fantastic series in the Seattle Mariners versus the Detroit Tigers. And I know, the Tigers are a little bit despondent when it comes to how their series ended, but that was a great series. And for the Tigers, honestly, I think they spent most of the season punching above their weight. I don't think they've truly arrived yet, especially with they have a ton of young talent that's going to be potentially up with the big league team next year.
Yeah, they're in prime position until they decide to have an utter collapse throughout that second half of the season. But no, they played well against the Mariners, including the marathon game. But again, chump change compared to Rockies fans. Remember 22 innings in San Diego? But just fun series all around. The Blue Jays just stomp on the Yankees in fun fashion. Good stuff.
Yeah. Felt a little bad for Ryan McMahon, who did get his first postseason home run, but I think overall the American League Championship Series is pretty much what I wanted it to be, which is Blue Jays versus either Tigers or Mariners. And, I'm going to be pulling for the Mariners, but either way, I'm happy with whoever is the American League representative for the series. Now, the big question is, can the Brewers put down the Dodgers?
Well, if MLB doesn't interfere and rig it like they always do, yes. Shohei Ohtani's got to... No, it's you hope that they can, because the Brewers they had the best record in the league for a reason. But, of course, it's always the Dodgers who just somehow always find a way. No, they found a way and always put themselves in a position to win. And so that's going to be the big question for them. Is can the Brewers withstand whatever the Dodgers throw at them and do what they've done all season? Is pitch good, hit good.
Yeah, and really for me, there were two teams in the National League that I thought had a chance to knock off the Dodgers. And it was the Phillies, and they weren't able to do it. And it's the Brewers, and we're going to see if they can step up.
Yeah.
Because the Dodgers have looked mortal. That's the thing. Their bullpen has been all over the place. They went for stretches of time where their star guys didn't really show up. Shohei Ohtani did not do much in the first, few games of the postseason. So now you need to keep them from getting hot, to keep your foot on the gas and not let them keep getting away with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. But it's at least fun to have more than one team to root for, because usually I find myself, like most years, it's like, who am I rooting against more than who am I rooting for? But then this year I'm actually like, okay, there's at least two teams I can root for. I don't know if I can bring myself to root for the Brewers, just because I never really like rooting for National League teams.
But you're at least not rooting against them.
Yes, I am rooting against the Dodgers.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the reasons why it would be cool for the Brewers to make it is because if we end up with a Brewers-Mariners World Series, one, it's really, really funny because it's the last thing the powers that be in the league want is two small to mid-market teams. But two, it would be the first time that both teams in the World Series will be gunning for their first title since the 1920s, which would be tremendously cool. And these are two fan bases who are definitely deserving of a ring, especially the Seattle Mariners. The Seattle Mariners have been through it, guys. Mm-hmm. They have been just punched and kicked, and it's been a rough go for them throughout their entire existence. And a lot of the things that they are doing this year are the first time that they've had this kind of a run since, 1995, since 2001. It's insane how long it's been for the Seattle Mariners. And they're in a really good place right now. And I would love nothing more for them to see them at least make it to the World Series.
And this one's going to be tough for them. Their offense still it's never really clicked for them. It's not the kind of team that they are. If they're not hitting home runs, okay, then things get a little dicey for them at times. We saw in that Detroit series, they sometimes had trouble scoring runs. And, they have to rely heavily on their pitching, which is good, and their bullpen. But when you're going up against the Brewers, or against the Toronto Blue Jays, rather, who are a good offensive team, and put the hurt on the Yankees, especially in those first two games, putting up double-digit numbers. And we saw what they did to the Rockies that one time. Like, we know what they can do.
Yeah.
That it's scary. Like, the pitching has really got to be go up another level, because I don't know if the Mariners offense can keep pace with the Blue Jays.
And that's the funny thing is we watched the Rockies play every playoff team this year, and nobody beat them down quite as bad, quite as consistently on every level than the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, in that little 3-game series.
Yeah, in that 3-game set, the Blue Jays were brutal and relentless.
Yeah. And then we saw the Mariners there at the end of the season. They too we can see what their offense can do when it's just rolling, but the Blue Jays have much better pitching than the Rockies do. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I hope they did it against Tarek Skubal though. They did enough. Mariners can do enough.
They did enough, especially because in that elimination game, Tarek Skubal was great. 13 strikeouts, one of the most in an elimination game in postseason history. And it just wasn't enough. And that's the thing is, I think overall, the Mariners have the better pitching staff from top to bottom. I think it is a better unit, especially with their starting pitching. They're getting Brian Wu back. They've got a great pitching staff. They've got a great closer in Andres Munoz. They've got a bunch of great starters. And yeah, we saw some of their relievers look mortal during the American League Division Series, but a lot of that was workload as well, where a lot of these guys were pitching a lot, and everybody's going to have a bad game or two, and it's the playoffs. They're playing against good competition, but they've got their work cut out for them against Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who will annihilate the ball and make it personal, and the rest of that hitting core. They've got a good hitting core.
Yeah, so that American League one's going to be a lot of fun, I think, for folks that tune in. I will gladly look at those random notifications that pop up on my phone, because I hardly ever watch the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's not easy to watch the playoffs either, because you either have to have over the air or cable TV.
Yeah, it's too many. It's spread a little thin.
Yeah,
this game's on Fox. No, this one's on ESPN. Oh, never mind. It's over on TBS/HBO Max. What's that? You need to have the standard version, not basic, with ads for HBO Max. Oh, and if you want to watch through MLB TV, well, too bad. You have to authenticate through a cable package.
Yeah. It's one of those things that people haven't really quite learned that, yes, it's great to make all of this money from all of your deals and stuff like that, but you know what makes you a lot more money is making your product accessible.
Yeah. Well, that too, and then you think of just the broadcasts themselves. Like, it's awesome. If you want to, you can listen to your local guys on the radio, your local radio guys. But I really wish that the TV crews could have their moments. Or in some capacity, somehow.
Instead of making us listen to John Smoltz.
Yeah, you can have your national broadcast, but in the local market, let the local guys do it in that market.
I mean, I think that's for all the playoffs, though. It's something that I really wish, in hockey, they would let, the altitude TV crew do the playoff games in addition to it. And I get it that they want people to watch the national broadcast, but at least give us the option.
Yeah.
Because it's the same for basketball, for baseball. Let us have that at least in the local market.
Yeah, that's fun in those, with the Nuggets and the Avalanche. That first round, you can watch those with the altitude guys. But then once it gets further on, which is fine if you want to do that, whatever. But it's still in those markets, give those guys opportunities. And I understand contracts and licensing, all the junk. But I feel like there's a way you could do it.
Exactly. There's got to be a better way. And also, I should not be having to listen to John Smoltz. I'm sorry. I don't know how a guy who has spent his entire life around baseball seems to know absolutely nothing about the sport.
Well, just like Alex Rodriguez, too.
They're all absolutely miserable while they're doing the broadcast, too. And it's a shame because in the American League Division Series, you had Adam Wainwright and
AJ Pierzynski.
No, who's the other guy? Mim something? Like Mark Mims, Adam Mims, something like that. But then we were stuck with AJ Pierzynski, and he was terrible.
It's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying, I wish there was a better way. Or do what the Rockies would do in spring training, where for the national broadcast, do the combined
broadcast.
Okay, we're at home. Okay, Mariners will be the primary, and Blue Jays will be the color. Okay, then when we go to Toronto, you swap vice versa.
Yeah, because then at the very least you have people who are invested.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that they want the appearance of an unbiased broadcast, but
It's never unbiased.
exactly. And
It's always going to be praising the Dodgers.
And, you hear people complain, oh, this guy's a homer, this guy's whatever. And it's like, but that gives the broadcast more emotion. Like, if I'm listening to the final play of the 2022 Stanley Cup Finals, am I listening to the national broadcast clips, or am I seeking out the clips where Connor McGahey is doing the call?
Yeah.
10 out of 10 times, I'm looking for the local call. And it's the same for the radio stuff of the series, like the Tigers call after they were eliminated, where you have the guy who accidentally swore afterwards.
F this recap.
That's how we felt a lot during the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, playoff baseball, it's been fun so far, at the very least. This has been a good round of playoffs. And I really, if the Brewers don't make it to the World Series, I at least want them to put up a heck of a fight.
Yes. Just wear the Dodgers down as much as you can for whoever's in the American League.
And I do think the Brewers can do it.
Yeah.
Like, they've got, of the two that were in the other National League Division Series, the Cubs and the Brewers, I think the Brewers have the better all-around team and the stronger odds of getting past the Dodgers. Because the Brewers actually played against the Dodgers really well in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Gonna be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll potentially know who's moving on by the next time we record.
I guess. Will we know? Potentially.
We might. Yeah, potentially.
Potentially.
Probably not. But maybe. But probably not.
But maybe?
But probably not. But perhaps.
But maybe?
But maybe don't. But I think that's going to do it here for us on another edition of Affected by Altitude. Skyler, where can the folks find you at?
Find me over on the Twitters at Skyler Timmons, over on Blue Sky at stimmons13, .bskball.social. Also find me writing over at Wednesday Rock Piles for purplerow.com and writing stuff for fansfirstsportsnetwork.com. I've been doing more Avalanche and hopefully do some Nuggets stuff and whatnot. Just keep me busy during the off season because I need a break from the Rockies.
Yeah, and we're at that part of the off season too, where nothing is happening because it's the playoffs, and man, it's hard to write articles. It's hard to find links to put in the articles.
Mm-hmm.
It's rough going.
And then the person who does the rock pile the day before you has like 5 article links. I'm like, oh no, why'd you take them all?
But you can find me over on Blue Sky at evanlang27.bxky.social. I would love to hear from you. Also find me over on Purple Row doing the Monday Rock Piles, the weekly Pebble reports, including correspondence from the Arizona Fall League. And we're also continuing our very long Ranking the Rockies series. Rockies used, 52, 54 different players this year?
57.
So, it's going to be a long one. And most of them were bad.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that you can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on all of your favorite podcasting platforms of choice. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. We'll catch the video version of the show over on YouTube.com. Remember that you can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on all of your favorite social media platforms. At Rocky Mountain Rooftop, that's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop. But once again, thank you so much for sticking with us in the long dark of the off-season. I'm Evan. That's Skyler. This has been Affected by Altitude. Skyler, how about you hit him with it and we'll go on home?
Farewell! I'm already home.
Me too.
Hey!
That was fast.
This has been Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. Catch new episodes every Monday on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us on YouTube as well for video versions of the show.